Hello everyone, it's Steve with Aptera Owners Club. Okay, so continuing on in our series of going through this investor webinar, let's talk about funding. And this has always been the case. Funding is the lifeblood of any startup. And, for comparison, I think Rivian and Lucid, spent $2-3 billion on their way to production. And they have spent in excess of $4 billion, and they are not revenue. They're not self-sustaining financially. They're still not revenue positive in terms of profit positive, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I think Rivian is pretty close. They have a plan, and I think if they execute their plan, they are going to finally reach profitability this coming year, maybe in 2025. Lucid does not seem to have a plan. They're kind of hoping that Gravity is going to take off, their SUV, and luckily they have the backing of the Saudi Arabia sovereign investment fund, so they have a lot of money backing them. So for the foreseeable future, they're going to stay alive. But any small startup, they depend on funding, and so Aptera has been successfully running on crowdfunding, but as you remember, they've been saying that they need 50 million to keep the ball rolling. This was back in December of 2022, and now it's 65 million. So here's the thing about production. There's gonna be timeline slippage on any startup, and there's gonna be more timeline slippage early on and hopefully less later on, because early on, when I was going through graduate school, it took me about 3 years of lab work to get my thesis data for my PhD, and my thesis was basically the product of like 30 experiments. 30 experiments can be done in like a month. So why did it take me 3 years to do it? If 30 experiments take a month? Because early on, the things you don't know, but then there's a bunch of things you don't know that you don't know. So it's the unknown unknowns that get you. And early on in any endeavor, and I mean, I haven't started a company, but I'm just imagining it somewhat like this. I'm trying to relate it to something that I know about. You just don't know what you don't know about the future. And so there is a lot of uncertainty. As you get closer, there's less unknown unknowns. And I think Aptera has made a lot of strides. We've gotten the thing with CPC. A lot of things are kind of nailed down, but there's still some unknown unknowns, like unknowns that they don't know about and they don't foresee. So that's why there's timeline slippage. The unknowns that they don't know, they're trying to factor it into their things. But anyways, their capital, the amount of capital they need is now 65 million, and they need to raise that. And I think they're thinking US Global is going to help them get there, and they sound like they're very confident that that's going to happen. And I think US Capital, a big group like that, is not going to take on a client like this unless they think that they can reasonably deliver. So we are hoping that funding finally comes through. We've been waiting for this funding since at least December of 2022. Okay, so that's what's happening. So with this 65 million, well, let's let Chris Anthony talk about it.
This is our current plan to production, cash flow positivity, and beyond. We're working right now to raise the $65 million we're talking about for 2024. Obviously, we're continuing our crowdfunding through this Reg CF, and we have an accredited round for Reg D investors. And with US Capital support, they'll fill in the rest of the funding needed for us to start production. But that first part of our plan, this 2024 raise, gets us to completing production intent vehicle builds, and it gets us to start a production and cash flow positivity. Specifically, the PI builds, we see it being a 10 to 16 vehicle program. Some of those vehicles may be used for multiple steps.
Okay, so see, they are saying now that the PI builds may go from 16 to 10. So they're giving themselves a range. So that's kind of what I expected. There's been some timeline slippage, and they're thinking, okay, do we really need to do 16 PI builds? Maybe we don't have to do all 16 of them. Maybe we can do 10 of them. We can make it do all the validation testing we need with just 10 vehicles and kind of speed up this process. I think that's a good thing. And then they need to do this. Now they're hoping that with the 65 million, they're going to get a factory up and running, and this is gonna be enough money to ramp to 6,000. If that's the case, that unlocks the matching grants, and then they're hoping they can show cash flow positivity or cash flow neutrality at the least. At that point, when they start ramping, then they're gonna go IPO, and then IPO is gonna bring them in this amount of money. I think that's what they're hoping.
It really depends on how the suppliers are ready to receive those vehicles, and sometimes their scheduling for validation and testing may not line up with certain vehicles, so it may take more vehicles because some suppliers may overlap. But if they run nice and organized, then maybe we can take a vehicle from one supplier and then just ship it to the other supplier, from testing the HVAC system to testing the ABS system. We We'll also be able to complete all of our electrical systems. We have most of the control of that here because we control all of our own I/O boards. We control the infotainment computer. We control kind of all the electronics, the code, software, the firmware that runs the vehicle. So we're not beholden to any outside entities for that, but we have to fund that ourselves and finish the work here ourselves. And obviously, impact testing, crash testing. We're going to share that information with you as soon as we have it, but some of those PI builds will be destroyed for science, and we'll be able to learn a lot from those. But our simulation tools are so good now, and a lot of even automotive manufacturers, they don't have to crash test a lot of vehicles because the simulation tools are so good to show you exactly what's going to happen, what's going to fail, and how the vehicle's going to act in impact sequences. Our path to start a production and cash flow positivity is really about filling this building full of equipment and tooling and jigs and assembly stations to get the vehicles rolling. This current part of the plan is really to ramp production up to about 6,000 vehicles a year.
So they're hoping 6,000 vehicles a year results in cash flow neutrality.
Obviously, everything in this building is capable in one shift of producing 10,000 vehicles a year, so we're set up for that. But really, Blake's amazing job at creating our financial model has this first raise getting us to a production volume of about 6,000 vehicles a year, and that is cash flow positive. So that's kind of our first big next milestone, is get the vehicle into production, then get the cash flow positive. As soon as you're not burning money, it makes life just a lot easier. This first raise also unlocks the rest of the California Energy Commission money to buy our solar and battery equipment here. It's a matching grant, so we have to put in money to receive money from the California Energy Commission. So this capital raise does that. It also unlocks a lot of equipment financing. So as soon as we start to fill the facility and become a more valuable company, it's easier to get other financial companies to finance big pieces of equipment. So some of the assembly robots and some of the jigs and stuff for assembling the vehicles in station, some of that stuff can be financed. It's usually financeable because you can sell it to somebody else if you ever didn't need it any longer. So like a lot of things, if it has kind of residual value, then the banks will loan on it. So we're hoping to be in a position with this raise to do a lot of that.
Okay, so let me translate what I think that means. So he says like when you no longer need it, aka like if the company goes insolvent, then the bank that loaned you money to buy the equipment can take the equipment back. It's kind of like repossessing your car if you stop making payments on your car. Or if, on the positive side, if Aptera grows and needs different piece of equipment, then they can, get, if they default on that, the company doesn't have nothing to talk for. The bank can still repossess the equipment and get something out of it.
Beyond that, looking into 2025, 2026, we're really talking about growing out of this plant, scaling beyond 20,000 vehicles a year, looking at IPO strategies, Department of Energy grants.
This is the ATVM loan he's talking about, the Department of Energy grant. Remember, the ATVM loan requires that you're already in production to get that grant. So I think their plan is we'll get into production, we'll get on the path to a cash neutrality, and then we'll get an IPO, and then we'll apply for the DOE funding. Hopefully, and there's some international grants and loans that that they're these are the things that the reason they set up Aptera Italia, and they can set up like Aptera Germany or something. There are grants from those companies. They want to set up things that'll help their economy, and they're willing to help give you grants to help fund their economy as well, to like for you to do work in Italy or in Germany or something like that.
And loan programs. We've been talking with a lot of international agencies in Europe, Italy, the Middle East, about grants and loan programs in those areas.
Right. This is probably the whole UAE thing.
But how do we grow from a facility that can produce 20,000 vehicles a year into many facilities that can produce 150,000 Aptera a year? So our goal is to spread solar mobility as far and wide as possible, and that means getting production numbers up as high as we can. That'll require multiple factories. So right now, Blake's financial model, our financial model shows about 200 million for that expansion effort, and then looking beyond that into building factories all the way out to 8 factories. We think in 2026 to 2030 we can really start to increase our margins and enhance our free cash flow, and be operating out of 6 to 8 plants in that time frame.
Okay, so look at this timeline. I think this timeline is very aggressive. Like, I would be very happy if they got up to 6,000 vehicles a year in 2026. That would be pretty impressive to me. And then if they got that and IPO'd in 2026 and got DOE funding, and they scaled up in like 2027, 2028, then I think this multiple plant thing is going to happen. Like, if it does everything, like, basically, I think what will happen is this will happen if we see demand for Aptera go up, like as there's more exposure and more people are interested, and you see like, oh, there's like 1 million people that want it, which is not unreasonable, because that 1 million people represents less than 1% of the annual, 1 million vehicles is less than 1% of the annual vehicle sales worldwide. So it's not unreasonable. But if you see like that kind of demand, hundreds of thousands to 1 million, then you're going to see investors saying, hey, this company has succeeded, they have demand, they've clearly shown they can produce, let's give them money to expand their successful business. And I think that's what will happen. But this timeline to me feels a little aggressive. I do not think that they're going to get to 6,000 vehicles a year in 2025. That seems pretty ambitious. If they get to it in 2026, I think that would be good. But maybe I'll be happily surprised. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. All right, so let me know what you guys think about the finance plans. What do you think this timeline is? Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.